So this happened last fall, and I still think about it more than I probably should. Our team had just won in overtime, which meant the whole campus was losing its mind. People were flooding out of the stadium, cars were honking, the whole thing. My friends decided to stay and keep celebrating with some people they'd met at the game, which was totally fine. I just wasn't feeling it that night, so I started walking back to my apartment alone. It was maybe a 15-minute walk that I'd done hundreds of times already. The first few blocks were still busy enough that it felt normal, but there's this one turn that takes you down a side street along the edge of campus, and the second I turned onto it, the crowd noise just sort of disappeared. The streetlights were also weirdly far apart, so there were long stretches of darkness between each one. That's when I noticed a car parked outside on the opposite side of the road, with no headlights on, but the engine was running and I could hear it. I told myself not to stare and just to keep walking, but I looked anyway because I couldn't help it. And I could make out someone sitting in the driver's seat, completely still and doing nothing. I picked up my pace a little, trying to move with a little more purpose. Then the engine revved. It wasn't very loud, just a small tap of the gas, and that's when I glanced back to the headlights coming on. It pulled away from the curb, but it didn't accelerate past me or anything. It just matched my speed, that kind of rolling, patient kind of movement that doesn't have an innocent explanation after a certain point. I crossed to the other side of the street like I needed to check something on my phone, and the car drifted towards the curb again, closer to me now. There was no one else around at this point, and the houses on the street all had their lights off. I made a decision and turned down this narrow path between two buildings. It's one of those shortcuts people use during the day, but avoid at night because it's badly lit and has a blind corner halfway through. I honestly don't know why I went in. I just think I wanted to break the line of sight and get away from this car. I was halfway through it when I heard the tires on gravel. I didn't look back. I just walked faster and came out on the other side. I cut through the entrance of a dorm building nearby, swiping my student ID and getting inside. Through the glass, I could see the headlights sitting at the entrance of the path. They stayed there for a while and then turned off. I waited in that lobby for probably 20 minutes before I went upstairs. I felt stupid about it, but not stupid enough to leave earlier. The next morning, I walked the same route because I wanted to feel normal about it again. When I got to that same path, I noticed something I hadn't seen in the dark. The tire marks didn't just stop at the entrance. They went in, very far actually, far enough that the car had tried to follow me before the path got too narrow for it to fit through. I don't know what that person wanted, and I'm not going to pretend like I do. I just know that whatever it was, a student ID card and a glass door is probably the only reason I didn't find out. I need to preface this story by saying I'm a pretty logical person. I don't believe in anything paranormal, and I think most creepy stories online have boring explanations to them. And even after this happened, I spent a long time trying to talk myself out of it and think about the logical ways I could explain it myself. I'm sharing this now because I still can't fully do that. I'm looking for some answers online. It was junior year of college during midterm season. It was one of those brutal weeks where everyone in a difficult class suddenly becomes very interested in forming a study group. There were 5 of us in one chat. We'd met at the library a few times, and it was nothing crazy. We were all friendly with each other. Then someone added a 6th person into the chat. The name wasn't familiar to me, but I figured they were in one of our classes and wanted to study with us. What was strange was how quickly this person started steering things. Within a day or two, they were pushing for a different meeting location, saying that the library was too busy, and they suggested an empty classroom in one of the older academic buildings that we could all go to. Something about the framing of this felt a little off to me even then, like the goal was specifically to go to the location and the studying was secondary to that. I couldn't articulate why, so I just let it go. We agreed to meet on a Tuesday around 9 p.m., which was around the same time that we usually studied. I arrived to find 2 other people from the group already there, sitting near the front. The person who had suggested the room hadn't arrived yet, and the 2 others were apparently running late. Almost there. be there soon, that kind of thing. After maybe 20 minutes, one of the people who was there got up and left. They said they were fed up. I left me and one other girl, someone I barely knew. I'm not sure exactly when the door closed. I just know that at some point I looked up and it was shut, and neither of us had touched it. I went and opened it, looked into the hallway, but it was empty. The lights were slightly dimmer than I remember them being when I arrived, but it didn't really bother me at the time. I just went and sat back down, and the girl next to me named Priya asked if I heard anything. I realized that I had at that moment. There was a scraping sound, almost like furniture moving from across the room. It sounded like it was coming from the room down the hallway. There was a second door at the rear of the classroom that led to a storage area. It had been fully closed when we got there. Now it was open maybe 2 or 3 inches. I went to check it. I don't know what I was expecting, maybe a janitor or a maintenance issue or something, but I pushed the door open and stood there while my eyes adjusted to the dark closet. There was just someone standing inside between the stacked chairs, completely still, and didn't say anything. Close enough that they would have had to move the door. Close enough that they would have had to move past the door we were sitting in to get there without hearing us. I closed the door, grabbed my bag, and we left. We didn't run, but we moved as fast as possible, both being really creeped out. We checked the chat. The 2 people who said they'd been running late had been messaging the whole time we were there, but they didn't say they were coming. They'd been asking me where we were. They were in the library, where we usually go. They'd never been heading to the building at all. The 6th account, the one who'd added themselves and set up this whole meeting, was gone. Not just silent, the account itself was completely gone, like it had never been part of the chat at all. There was no message history anymore. I reported it to campus security the next day. They took a statement and they said they'd look into it. I never heard anything back, and I don't expect to ever get an explanation for that. The whole experience has left me really weirded out. Luckily, I don't have any classes in that building anymore. I've gone back and forth about posting this because I still don't have a clean ending to give you, and I know that's frustrating to read, but I've been sitting on it for over a year, and I think I just need to write it out and tell you guys. My freshman roommate's name was Aaron. We weren't best friends or anything, but we got along well, and we shared a small space without any real friction. He had a habit of being out late, usually studying or out drinking with friends, so I was used to falling asleep before he came back and hearing him unlock our door late. One Friday night he mentioned he was going out to meet someone. It was normal for him, and I expected to hear him coming back late again. I went to bed around midnight that night. I didn't notice for a couple hours after waking up, but he wasn't home in the morning. That alone wasn't alarming to me, but when I actually looked at his side of the room, his backpack was gone and his laptop was gone. Everything else was still there though. His clothes and his sneakers, his wallet was sitting on the desk. That specific combination of what was missing and what wasn't missing felt wrong in a way that I couldn't explain. I texted him but got no response, and so I called him, but it went straight to voicemail. By that evening, campus police came by, asked me a few questions, thanked me, and then left. The whole thing was handled in this quiet, procedural way that I think was designed not to cause panic, but it almost had the opposite effect on me. His family came and took most of his things. The school moved me to a different room, and life sort of moved around the whole situation. About 2 weeks later, towards the end of school, I realized I left my journal in the bedside table in my old room. I went back to get it, but the door was locked, but I still had my old key, as I never asked for it back. The room was mostly stripped clean, but his desk drawer was slightly open, and there was a folded piece of paper inside that I don't think his family had seen. It wasn't a note in any typical sense. It was a list, dates and times going back about 3 weeks, each with a short description. Most of them were ordinary, library, gym, whatever, but scattered throughout there were ones that weren't. Parking lot, same car. Followed from class, ? Outside dorm, 2:13 a.m. Didn't move this time. The last entry was dated the night he disappeared. It just said, He knows I stood there for a while trying to find the interpretation, where that means something benign. I couldn't. I gave the paper to campus police. I don't know what they did with it. I don't know where Aaron is. His family never reached back out to me, and I don't feel right pushing. The case is technically still open as far as I know, but I don't think there's anything come of it yet. I think about the last line a lot on that piece of paper. He knows I noticed. Notice what, Aaron? What did you see? I'm so confused, and this story gives me so much anxiety. My story is pretty short because honestly not a lot happened, but it's the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me, and it feels like one of those things that felt completely normal until one detail recontextualized the whole thing later on. I had a once-a-week night class in one of the older buildings on campus. Our professor canceled last minute, but I was already there and it was really cold, so I just picked an empty lecture hall that was open and decided to get some work done and study a bit. I was there for maybe 40 minutes before I heard the door at the back creak open. I'd half turned, expecting another student who'd gotten the same cancellation late email, but nobody walked in. The door was just open wider than before. I looked at it for a few seconds and then went back to my notes, thinking a draft just pushed it open. Then I heard footsteps along the back wall. They weren't coming towards me, just slow and kind of uncertain, like someone pacing and they didn't know where they were going. I then fully turned around to a man standing in the back row. He was an older man that didn't have a backpack or anything in his hands. He didn't look like campus security or anything like that. He was just standing there, partially in the shadows, watching me. I did that awkward nod and smile that you do out of reflex when you make eye contact with a stranger. He didn't nod back or do anything. He just stood there looking at me. I packed up my stuff and took the long way around the room to just stay a few rows around him. I got out. I could hear him start moving again as soon as I got close to the door. But when I looked back from the hallway, he just stopped. He was just standing there in the middle of the room now. I mentioned it the following week to my professor, kind of like a passing comment. Like, hey, there was a weird guy in lecture hall today when it was empty. Not expecting much of a response. He paused for longer than felt normal, and he said that the building's lecture halls are supposed to be locked after 6 p.m. There had been a policy in place for years. He seemed genuinely bothered by it, and he asked me which room it was and wrote it down. I don't know how that guy got in. I just know that when I was sitting there alone, I had no idea that door was supposed to be locked, and maybe that's exactly what he was counting on. I'm a pretty private person, so I'm just going to say this happened at a large state school in the Midwest and leave it at that. I'm a pretty large female. Not huge by any standard, but I'm definitely not petite. And a lot of people don't know this, but many universities run these late night shuttle services specifically so students don't have to walk alone in the dark, or to get drunk students back home safe. Hours ran until 2 a.m. on weekends, and you could either wait at a designated stop around the campus, or call ahead and request a pickup from wherever you were. The drivers were all supposed to be university employees, background checked and everything. It was one of those services that made parents feel better about sending their kids somewhere with 30,000 strangers. I used it maybe once or twice a month, usually after late library sessions or when the weather was really bad. It was always the same few drivers, older guys mostly, friendly in that tired, seen everything kind of way. You'd hop in, tell them where you were going, and they'd drop you off. Simple as that. One night in November, I called for a pickup outside the science building around 11:30. It was cold enough that I didn't feel like walking back, and I had my laptop with me in my hands, so I just wanted to get home. The dispatcher said a driver would be there in about 8 minutes. A van pulled up in maybe 5. It looked the right color, same general shape, and I checked for the logo on the side that was there. It was slightly faded, but the university seal was there, so I got in. The driver didn't say anything when I got in, which wasn't totally unusual. Some of them were just quiet. I told him the dorm I was going to, and he nodded and pulled out. For the first minute or two, everything seemed pretty fine. Then I noticed we'd turned in the wrong direction. I figured maybe he was swinging by another stop first to pick someone else up, and that happens sometimes, so I wasn't that weirded out. But once we'd passed the stop, there was no one there, and he didn't slow down at all. I leaned forward a little and said, "Hey, I'm in Hadley Hall, just making sure you have the right address." He said he knows, and that was it. The thing that started to get me wasn't the route, it was the interior now. The university shuttles all had this specific setup: a partition behind the driver, a few rows of forward-facing seats, a card reader by the door for student IDs. This van had bench seating along the sides, the kind that face inwards so passengers face each other, with no partition and no card reader. I realized this and I opened up my phone to the shuttle app, which lets you track the vehicle assigned to you, pick up real time. The dot on the map was still sitting outside the science building, and it hadn't moved. I kept my voice as normal as I could manage and said, "Actually, I just got a text from my friend. Do you mind dropping me off at the next corner? I'm going to meet her instead of going to my dorm." I was already looking at the door handle. He didn't respond for a second. Then he said that we were almost there. I said, "That's okay, I'll just get out here." There was another pause. Then he finally pulled over. I got out, told him thanks, and walked in the direction of a gas station I could see about a block up. I didn't look back until I heard the van pull away. When I got to the gas station, I called the shuttle dispatch directly and asked if my driver had been held up. The woman on the other line said that the driver had been waiting outside the science building for about 10 minutes and she was about to mark me as a no-show. I described the van that picked me up. She said that it didn't match any vehicle in their fleet at all. She asked if I was somewhere safe, so I told her yes, and that she was going to call campus police. 2 officers came, took a statement from me. They seemed to take it very seriously and asked for any details I could remember. They took down the approximate direction the van had gone. I didn't get a plate number, which I've regretted a ton since. I don't know if they ever found anything, but I transferred to a different school the following year for unrelated reasons, so I never really got any kind of follow-up from them, or I never heard any news. I don't know if they ever found anything. I transferred to a different school in the following years for unrelated reasons, so I never really got any kind of follow-up, and I've never heard any news about it since. I still think about how normal the first 2 minutes felt, almost how I didn't check the app. How if my stop had been a little closer, I probably would have just gotten out, said thanks, and never known anything was wrong. The logo on the side is what really gets me. That wasn't an accident at all, it was there. Whoever had it put some thought into it, and it's creepy to think he might still be out there doing the same to less assuming students.